I knew that this day would change my life forever. As I stood at the altar, holding Alex's hand, I saw my father sitting in the front row with a stony expression. His eyes burned with contempt and his jaw was clenched with anger. He was warning me. Pleaded, threatened, manipulated. But I chose my heart over my status. Alex was an ordinary guy. He worked as a car mechanic, honest and hardworking. He did not have a degree from a prestigious university and did not come from a rich family. But he loved me. He loved me like no one else had ever loved me. For me, this was more important than money, more important than reputation, and even more important than my father's approval. After the wedding, my father did not say a word to me. He deleted my number, blocked me on social media, and told my family that I no longer existed for him. I tried to call, write, but there was silence in response. He just cut me out of his life. It was painful. It hurt beyond belief. I grew up without a mother, and my father was the only support in my life. His love was cold, but it was there. And now it is gone. But I didn't give up. Alex and I started from scratch. We rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, worked day and night to save money for our own place. I saw my husband working late into the night to pay our bills. And I loved him even more for that. We went through debts, ridicule from relatives, and even poverty. But together we survived. A few years later, we had a son. Little Liam became the meaning of our lives. I was happy, although somewhere deep in my heart I was still gnawing at the thought that my father would never see his grandson. Meanwhile, my father's life had also changed. He married for the second time. His new wife, Carla, was 20 years younger than him. She looked like a model and had a charm that drove men crazy. But I knew that she didn't see him as a man, but as his accounts, real estate, and status. The family tried to warn him, but he was blinded by youth and beauty. Carla gradually isolated him from everyone, controlled the finances, fired the old assistants, and took control of the entire house. My father stopped meeting his friends and kept in touch with his relatives only through her. It seemed that I was the only one who could predict how it would end. But I was no longer in his life. Sometimes I thought he was still watching me from afar. Did he see how I raised Liam? Did he know that I graduated and started my own small business? Did he regret cutting me out of the family? I never received an answer. My wounds healed slowly, but I learned to live without my father's support. And although I tried to forget the pain, deep inside I was still waiting for the moment when fate would put everything in its place. I didn't know that this moment was already approaching. And it would be much worse than I could have imagined. Years passed, but the wound from the loss of my father did not heal. I learned to live without him, learned not to wait for a call on holidays and not to rely on him for support when things got tough. But every night, when Alex and Liam were already asleep, would catch myself thinking, what if he had changed? What if he realized how wrong he was? I was hurt not so much because of his abandonment of me, but because he had so easily put his life in the hands of a stranger. I heard a lot about Carla. People said that she literally destroyed his entire environment. His father stopped coming to family meetings, avoided even his closest friends, and his company was now run by some new manager whom Carla had brought in to optimize finances. Relatives tried to talk to him, warning him that he was putting too much trust in a woman who only wanted his money, but he wouldn't listen to anyone. She gave me something you can never have, a new beginning, he told his sister, who never tried to reach him again after those words. It was painful for me to even imagine how my once strong, confident father turned into a puppet in the hands of a woman who simply played on his fears and complexes. I knew why he clung to Carla so much. He was afraid of old age. He was afraid of being alone, afraid that without his mother, his wife, and his daughter, he would become useless to anyone. And she skillfully used this fear, giving him the illusion of youth and a second chance. But what price did he pay for it? I saw him gradually selling his assets, closing down old projects, and transferring some of his real estate to Carla. She began to control not only his business but also his social life. His old friends could no longer meet him. Carla found thousands of reasons to isolate him from anyone who could open his eyes. And what's worse, he was happy in this illusion. He posted photos on social media from expensive resorts where Carla showed off her designer dresses and her perfect life. But I saw emptiness in his eyes. People said he had become aloof and silent. That even at corporate meetings, he hardly ever talked about business, just looked at Carla, as if he was afraid to say an extra word. It tore me up from the inside. I wanted to intervene. I wanted to write to him, call him, come and tell him he was making a mistake. But each time I was stopped by one thought: if he could give up his own daughter so easily, could he hear me now? Alex told me, "You have already made your choice. You shouldn't go back to a place where you are not appreciated." But I could not let go of this pain. I saw my husband working 3 jobs to provide for our family. I saw Liam and I drawing cards for his birthday, knowing that he wouldn't even open them. And yet, somewhere deep down, I still believed that the day would come when the truth would be revealed. And while my father blindly enjoyed his young happiness, I silently watched as his life gradually turned into a trap from which he could not escape. I did not know that this day was coming. And it would be much worse than I could have imagined. It happened suddenly. I learned about it from my Aunt Linda, who still tried to keep in touch with my father, even though he had pushed her away like everyone else. One morning, my father discovered that all his accounts were empty. The money he had saved, all his life investments, real estate, stocks, all gone. Carla disappeared with it. She simply packed up her things, left his mansion, and left a short note on the kitchen table. It was a great time, but I'm not cut out for old and broken men. Enjoy what you have left. He had nothing left. His company had long since been taken over by the people Carla had brought in. His accounts had been completely emptied and the real estate had been transferred to her name a few months before. The father was left in an empty house, where the illusion of a happy life reigned until a few days ago. He tried to reach out to his friends, but those he had once betrayed turned their backs on him. His best friend, who had once warned him about Carla, said only, "You made your choice, Thomas. And you ruined everyone who tried to save you." His family also did not want to deal with him. His brother refused to even speak to him, and the nephews and cousins he had once ignored at family gatherings for Carla simply did not return his calls. He was left alone. Without money. No reputation. No support. But the most painful thing for him was that he had destroyed the only person who truly loved him. Me. I found out about it by accident. Aunt Linda called me and said, "Your father is broken. He's not even trying to do anything. He's just sitting in that empty house, not eating or leaving his room. Carla destroyed him, and he destroyed everything he had." These words should have made me feel good, right? I had warned him. I tried to reach him for years. But instead I felt only emptiness. I imagined him sitting in that big house where Carla's laughter used to sound, and now there is only silence and despair. He had lost everything he had betrayed his family for. And worst of all, now he had no one to turn to. I thought that this moment would be my victory. But deep down, I was still that girl whom my father pushed away because I fell in love with a person of the wrong class. And now that he had gotten his way, I didn't feel triumphant. Only pain. I sat in the kitchen clutching my phone and thought for a second. maybe this is a chance. Maybe he finally realized. But then I remembered how he kicked me out of the house, how he called me a disgrace, how he cut me out of his life. It was his choice. And now he has to live with the consequences. I didn't know what to do. And he, somewhere there, in a dark house, was alone with himself for the first time in his life. The phone rang late at night. I saw a number I hadn't seen in 10 years. It was him. My father. It took me a few seconds to collect myself and answer. The voice on the other end of the line was shaky, weak, and almost unrecognizable. Leanne. He barely said my name, and I felt something cold run down my spine. Daughter. I need your help. My breath caught in my throat. It was the same man who had once kicked me out of the house for disgracing his family by marrying a man he didn't think was my equal. The one who deleted my number and cut me out of his life. And now he called me in tears and begged for help. Carla, she took everything. He sobbed, she withdrew all the money, signed over the property, and disappeared. I was silent. Two feelings were fighting inside me, anger and pity. Part of me wanted to throw everything I had felt for the last 10 years in his face, pain, humiliation, a sense of betrayal. But the other part. This was my father. The man I had once adored, whom I had tried to understand, and to whom I wanted to prove that love was not measured by status or money. Why are you calling me now? I finally asked, trying to hide the trembling in my voice. He fell silent. Because, you are the only one I have left, he whispered. These words cut into my heart. The pain and resentment did not disappear, but I felt something else. I felt pity. I imagined him sitting in his empty house, destroyed by the woman for whom he had sacrificed everything including me. I can't help you, Dad, I said coldly. He started to say something, but I interrupted him. You made your own choice. You gave me up for a woman who betrayed you. I was about to hang up, but he whispered. There's a bill. I froze. I opened it before your wedding. In your name. You were my only daughter, and as much as I didn't want to admit it, I still wanted to provide for you, in case. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Carla couldn't reach him. It was all I had left. It sounded like a cruel joke of fate. My father had disowned me, destroyed our relationship, but subconsciously still left me one last chance to save his life. I didn't know what to feel. Anger for the betrayal. Pain for the loss of 10 years. Or compassion for a broken man who finally realized how cruelly wrong he had been. What do you want from me, Dad? Help me withdraw this money. It's the only thing I have left. I don't know how else to survive. I clutched the phone. This was my chance to pay him back in kind. To say that he was no longer my father. But I remembered how many years ago I stood in front of him in my wedding dress, begging him not to turn away from me. He didn't hear me then. But now he was begging me. I'll think about it, I said coldly and hung up the phone. I didn't know if I could forgive him. I sat in front of the computer screen, looking at the numbers on the account that once belonged to me, before my father cut me out of his life. For a few seconds I just stared at them, feeling each zero remind me of the year after year I lived without him. The year when he decided that my love for a man from that lower class was such a great crime that I no longer deserved to be a part of his world. The same world that he had tried again and again to preserve at all costs, even at the cost of his own daughter. Now he was a part of my reality again, but this time in tears, trying to get back what was no longer his. My father had fallen into a trap set by his new wife. She had taken everything he had, and now he was left with nothing. I was split in my heart. On the one hand, I felt the same way I felt 10 years ago: anger, disgust, indignation. How could he leave me, his daughter, for a woman who was with him only for his money? How could he humiliate me so low when I was just trying to be happy? But on the other hand, I felt compassion, which came out of the blue. I heard something in his voice that I hadn't heard from him in years: weakness. A weakness that made me wonder if I was really ready to leave him in this desperate situation. Alex, my husband, has always been there for me. He didn't put pressure on me, didn't demand that I make any decisions, but I knew that he wanted me to decide for myself. As always, he was my support, a quiet force that did not interfere with my thoughts, but simply supported me. And now, as I sat in front of the computer, torn between the desire to take revenge on my father for everything he had done and the desire to do at least something good, I looked at him, but didn't say a word. I had to decide whether I was ready to help the man who had caused me so much pain, who had gone to such extremes to deprive me of everything I had ever loved. How could my father act like that? How could he not even see that I was his family? What was left between us? I looked at the account again. The money that was left could help him, give him a chance for a new start, but did I have the right to let him back into my life? I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there when he kicked me out: remorse. But is it worth helping someone who has caused so much pain? I started typing the story, but with every word I typed, I felt something in me change. I couldn't just give him everything. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about giving him a chance without restoring what he lost because of his pride and weakness. So I decided that I would help, but only on my own terms. I transferred some money, knowing that he would be grateful. It was not a large amount compared to what he once had, but it could give him the opportunity to start again. However, there was one important condition: after that, he could no longer enter my life. I no longer want to be a part of this world where there is only manipulation and deceit instead of family. My relationship with him is behind me. The moment I clicked on the list button, I realized that I was no longer that young girl looking for my father's love and support. I was a woman who had created her own life and her own family. And even though I helped him, I knew for sure that I would never return to that dark corridor where he left me alone. Alex was silent, but I felt that he supported my decision. He didn't need an explanation, and he knew that I wouldn't let myself be manipulated, even when it came to my blood. It was my decision. And although it didn't bring me peace, I realized that I had made the right move. I helped, but I didn't forget. And it was the best thing I could do for myself and for him.